Do you taste these? I'm just curious.
No, it will destroy your palate.
Oh, will it?
One foul swoop, yep.
I guess I won't then. That's fine.
You're welcome to try it.
I am curious. Oh, it is gross.
Is it fairly atomic?
Ooh, it's really gross. Welcome back to another episode of Chemist in the Kitchen. My name is Adrian. I'm a physical chemist. I work at a medical device company. I'm here at a Mother Earth Brew Co, and we're gonna talk about the process of making beer and let my curiosity run wild. So come follow me. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Adrian, I'm Chris Baker.
Nice to meet
I'm
you.
the Director of Brewing Operations here at Mother Earth. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
And today we're gonna brew some Cali Creamin' and kind of go through our process and take a look at everything that we do.
Ah, sounds great. So actually, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. So how'd you get into this?
Okay, so I originally started with Stone Brewing Company here in San Diego about 12 years ago.
Yeah.
I started in medicinal chemistry. I have a biochemistry degree from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and just kind of fell into this industry and really kind of took control of this operation a few years ago and taking it to where it's been today.
Yeah, tell me about this beginning of the process itself.
Well, we're gonna brew Cali Creamin', and so that's Mother Earth's flagship. And so we can kind of look at the malts that we're gonna brew with today. So Cali Creamin' is a fairly simple recipe. It is a cream ale. Cream ale is a style that craft brewers designed a long time ago to kind of compete with what the macro brewers were doing.
Yeah.
But for small breweries, lagers are hard because they take a lot of time. They're not necessarily high margin beers. So brewers are like, oh, let's make a cream ale, which is basically a lager type base, but fermented like an ale. So faster production, faster turnover.
Okay.
We kind of put a little bit of a spin on it because it's called a cream ale, and cream ale would make you think like, oh, it's creamy, but that wasn't really what craft brewers were going for. So we kind of rolled with that. We add a little bit of vanilla to the product at the end, and it kind of gives the drinker what they think a cream ale is, even though that's not what it's designed to be.
All words I don't get yet, so we're gonna kind of get there. So maybe we should start with the kind of the malt, because I know this is the basis of the process.
For sure. Realistically, we use base malt, which is in the bag right here. So this is just base 2-row barley.
Yeah.
2-row barley has like, it has everything that we need. It doesn't have a lot of...
Also, I just stuck my hand in there.
That's okay. Everything here is going to get boiled. So everything in here is like, this is our base. This is what's going to drive the sugar. That's going to give us the alcohol. But just like at home, you got to add flavor to that. You got to add spice to it. And that's where all these other malts come from. But then you get into something like this, which is a Crystal 15 product.
Which is also a drug.
Which is, But
so this is the base you said. So this, I know in this process that this has to start out dry to some degree, right? Because this is a seed.
Yes, and so it's in a field, right? Obviously they go and they pick it. What they do to malt it is they germinate it. So they bring it all out and they add a little bit of water. And as the seeds begin to grow, they wait until they get to a certain point where they've broken down basically the sac that the starches are contained in, and they start to produce the enzymes that they need, and then we kiln it to dry it so it freezes that process.
Yeah. So in this terms of process here for the Crystal 15 malt, like this is kind of like one step in that direction. But actually to get from here to here, this also involves a lot of science and chemistry, right?
Exactly. And so like that's gonna be our base. That's what's gonna drive the sugar in our process for brewing. And then you're fine. And then and then the C15 is going to kind of add the flavor. So we're not worried as much about the sugar that's in here, but more the flavor that's
here. And what are the other bags?
Okay, so on the other bag, so we also have a honey malt. So that's the C15, that's the honey malt.
And then this one, you can't.
It does
smell like caramel.
Once we crush them, you'll kind of get a little bit of idea better about how they smell and what they add to the beer.
So maybe we should throw some things in the hopper?
Yeah, we want to get going. To kind of lead us through this process, I'm going to bring in my head brewer, Brett Stitzman. He joined us here. He joined us here to help us drive this facility. So Brett, let's go ahead and let's start milling in. If you want to throw the first bag, then I'll follow you up and we can start loading the hopper.
Sounds good.
Unless you want to throw one of these bags?
I can, yeah.
So here.
Which one? This one?
Let's throw this one.
We can only do this once, by the way. So there's only one shot at this, so we have to do this correctly. Are there OSHA requirements? I'm kidding. Okay, so just dump this in?
Just don't fall in the hopper.
Okay, I won't. All right, this way. A lot.
All right, so these we don't need to mill or crush because they're already basically pre-crushed or pre-gelatinized. And so they're going directly into our hopper, or we'll pull from to do, or we'll pull from when we go to mash in.
This is where the moment that I feel like I'm gonna spill this entire bag.
That's all right.
Well, on the floor? This is why we work out, right?
Yep. So we're gonna close this up and start our mill. Woo! Then go over here and start up the hopper. And so basically,
going down, yeah.
Yeah, so basically now you just have a corkscrew essentially in there. It's just a wound auger that is going to, that motor on top is going to pull that grain up, drop it into that little tiny hopper that's on top of there since we keep going hoppers. Yeah. And then there's a mill in there that's basically two big gnarled rollers that are rolling like this. And as it goes down, it will crush the seed basically and expose the industry.
I didn't hear a word he said, but we're gonna go take this hopper. We're gonna finish this and we're gonna go talk more about the science of brewing.
So now that all of our grain is crushed, we're ready to actually start the brewing process, which we're gonna do down here. But this is basically the brewery. So these are where all of our fermentations are gonna take place in all of these conical vessels. And then this is our bright beer tanks are where we're going to carbonate and package the beer out of.
Oh yeah, so we should walk over there. So this is where everything takes place after you mash, or this is the mashing.
This is, so this is gonna be mashing, lautering, sparging, boiling, whirlpooling or filtration. All right, so like I said, grain's gonna come up, come down through this auger into our hydrator, again, where we're gonna basically mix water and grain. And at that point, we're basically making oatmeal. And so we'll bring in hot and cold water, like I said, to make about 165 degree temperatured water to go in and meet that. And when it falls down, it'll fall in at about 155 degrees. And at that temperature, we're gonna activate alpha amylase, beta amylase, limit dextrinase. And those are the three that we're gonna mainly focus on. So we're gonna take all those starches that are in those molecules in our grain and break them down into fermentable sugars. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna preheat the vessel because we wanna control our temperature loss. And he's gonna go through and do all that.
And it's not official without that disco ball, right?
The disco ball is what actually makes the beer work.
And Jeff Goldblum.
Oh,
Jeff Goldblum's up there. He's always watching.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
That feels good because it's
does,
raining
doesn't it?
gross
It does
outside.
It's good for the face. Nice face. So I'm trying to do is come to the our mashing temperature, which is roughly around 168.
Okay.
It changes as the weather changes.
Is that the hot water that you're pushing around?
Yeah. So I'm taking a sample so we can check our pHs.
So that's one interesting thing here also is about the water quality, right? So this is actually really important. So where are you getting the water, and do you have to do anything before you actually do into this mashing?
Yes, before we start mashing, yes. And actually, yes. So our water comes from the city of Vista. The natural water that occurs in Southern California is really high in sulfates, which leads to these water profiles that really lend themselves towards IPA and bitter and crispness, which is a really nice part of Southern California beer.
So how long will it take to fill this tank?
So it'll take them about 15 to 20 minutes to get all of the grain transferred out of our hopper in the other room, up here, fully hydrated and into this vessel. And then from that point, we're gonna wait about 10 minutes. So we have enzyme activity happening right now while through this mashing process, but then we wait an additional 10 minutes after that to just allow the starch breakdown to occur how we want. So he's using temperature, time, and pH to really manage what's gonna happen here.
But don't you find it interesting that the enzymes are working that fast?
Oh yeah,
so
it's almost instant. And it takes, I mean, honestly, 10 minutes is probably over the top. It could happen in 5 minutes.
Wow, that's crazy. That is really fast. All right, so now that we've waited the 15, 25 minutes, now the water's in there. Now what happens next?
So we've created our mash profile that we're looking for, which is gonna, dictate the fermentability of the beer. And so now we're actually gonna use the husks and the solid material in the grain particles to filter it out and to clean it up. And so Brett's gonna start a process called Vorschießen first. So we had a false bottom in there, a string.
One more time?
Vorschießen.
Oh, Vorschießen.
So it's all the words here are going to be German.
Okay.
And so there's a false bottom in there, and underneath that are draw-off ports. And so this Vorschießen step is going to be kind of clearing any grain that might have settled underneath the false bottom, making sure it comes out. And so this hammering, he's basically using a water hammer to clear any clogs.
Oh yeah.
And so he just does this a couple of times. And you can see how turbid and murky it is.
Yep.
And so over the course of about 15 minutes, that's gonna go from looking like that to being pretty much crystal clear.
Okay.
So you can see the sight glass up there.
Yeah.
Is this liquid going back up? Yeah.
I was like, there's no way it's gonna be clear. That's already brown. There's no way.
So during this process, obviously our mash is all mixed together. We have a lot of really small, fine particles of grain that we actually want to filter out, because if we boil with those in there, it creates astringencies or bitterness that we don't want. So what we're looking at doing right now is we're actually bringing the wort off the bottom of the vessel and pumping it back on top. And through that circulation process, we're creating a filter bed, which we'll take a very hazy product and make it really clear.
Okay.
The clearer that product is, the better, the smoother that beer will be on the back end.
Will it still have this brownish, tannish color to it, or are we talking about like clear, like water?
No. It'll still have color to it, but it will be completely like transparent.
Yeah.
So now he's gone through the process of clarification and everything. It's starting to brighten up and get as clear as we want it to be. And so now that the wort is ready to collect, because we've gotten all those little, astringent particles out of there, he's going to start transferring over to our next vessel, which is our boil kettle. And so when he does that, we're basically just collecting that, barley juice, like I said, and beginning to essentially fill our kettle and be ready to boil the wort so that we can get into a sterile setup before we have yeast.
Yeah.
Just wait now until we get the bottom plate filled and covered, and then we can start turning on the steam. Very important that you maintain a really basic speed. You don't want to go too fast or you'll stick your mash and it'll ruin your day. Right now is what we're bringing all the wort over, and we're going to bring it in here so we can bring it to boil and burn off any of the bad things that are in there. They could be contamination or anything like that. Plus, this is where we add hops as well. So the next process, what we're going to be doing is adding water to the top, which is called sparging.
Sorry, I was entranced by what's in here. It doesn't look great. It smells very different. So if we add the water to the top, right, this is trying to press out to get back into here.
Right, and we don't want to put too much water on top, or it'll stick your bed.
Stick your bed.
So, and you want the right temperature as well.
Yeah.
So I think we're about ready we can start our sparge now.
Okay.
So it's going to come through here.
Can we look? Or you can't look when we're sparging, can we?
It's still very liquidy.
Yeah.
What you don't want it to do is get solid.
Okay, yeah, I know.
Or we can just stand here in the hot water.
Yeah, I know, stand here in the hot water. And what happens after this? So we wait for this to fill up for like...
It takes about 70 minutes to bring this over, and then after that we'll have to wait for it to come to boil, which is usually about a half hour to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And then once we bring it to a boil, our time starts. And that's what during that 75 minutes that we boil, you can add hops at different times. And it depends on where you add the hops and what bitterness you get out of it, or more of a juiciness.
Yeah.
And so that's really where, when you're making a recipe, where you can really dial things in.
Like, I've never seen hops myself. Honestly, I just imagine it just like dusty flour of some sort, or pollen.
They more or less look like rabbit food.
Oh, they do look like rabbit food.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
So this is going to have a little bit more aroma. So once it gets in the beer, and it's hard to smell out of the pellets, but you're going to get kind of like
I smell it now.
A grapefruit, like kind of orangey type smell out of these.
How many grams?
You're doing 4 pounds.
Grams?
Pounds. So we're going to add 1 pound of our bittering hop. It's a 44-pound bag, so that's going to be a little heavy.
I got it. Did that spill it all over the floor? Do you taste these? I'm just curious.
No.
Okay.
And actually, it was a joke at Stone. They'd be like, "Does anybody want to try one?" And it will destroy your palate.
Oh, will it?
One foul swoop. Yep. So you really don't want it because the rest of the things will just taste weird after that.
Okay. I guess I won't then. That's fine. Oh, it is gross.
Is it fairly atomic?
Ooh, it's really gross. It's really gross.
So I mean, if you think about this, we're going to use 4 pounds to add flavor to, more or less like 1,200 gallons.
Are you sure you don't want to try it?
I'm sure I don't want to. So we're now ready. We're going to stage these up. We're not quite ready to add these, but these are getting pretty close, so we'll go stage them up on the deck.
Let's go.
I mean, after we separate all the solids out and we've got our liquid in there and we're getting ready to boil, we got to pull the grain out, obviously. Yeah. It's incredibly hot, but And so another one of my favorite things about the industry is that these grains are going to get captured and they go into a bin outside that our farmer's going to come pick up.
Is it fertilizer?
No, they use it to feed their cattle.
Oh.
And so they cut it in with their normal feed, so it cuts on cost. And so actually the marriage between brewer and farmer in San Diego is actually pretty nice. Yeah. And it goes about like you would expect.
Just like a newborn.
Yeah.
Now how do you get the rest out?
So then he'll take this and he's gonna take it out. We've got a big roll off like dumpster.
Yeah.
And he basically puts it in and then our farmer will pick it up here in the next couple of days and go drop it in his field for all his cattle.
All right, so now we've got all that out. Wait out the hops, so we're gonna go up and put the hops in.
We're just waiting for him to get to boil. He's at, what are you at?
209.
209, so we got a few minutes and we'll get to boil and then we'll go up and throw in our bittering hops.
This is it. Throw them in, do I care?
No, just throw them in.
One shot, everyone. Ooh, look at that. The casing that they were in, looked like hamster pellets, right? So will they disperse?
Yep.
Will they just break apart?
When they make them, they kind of set it up so that they come apart pretty rapidly. Okay. And so we got 60 minutes of boil that will isomerize the alpha acids that are in there and create the bitterness that we measure and track. The sugar process of what we're doing here is we had that mash going there. We had all the grain. We collected all this wort. We rinsed the grains. We collected into one big tank. And so he's checking the gravity. And the gravity, we can relate back to how much grain we used, the types of grain we used, and talk about like what our actual efficiency is. So there's what's called a Congress mash, which is where they take every grain that we have, they take individually, they put 1 pound into 1 gallon.
Yes.
And then they measure what they get for the gravity.
Yes.
And that's what establishes the standards for which we do efficiency on.
Okay. What's the typical efficiency?
For us, we're like here, we're right around like 80, 85.
Okay.
A more advanced system will get up to like 90, 95. And then actually in some new systems, there's what's called a mash filter now. And they can actually get up to about 120% efficiency just because the standard's based on that, the simple Congress mash.
Correct, yeah.
So this is our density meter.
Just pulling it up in there.
Yep, so rinse it a couple of times.
Oh, look at that. 1.052 my contacts in, yes.
So check it a couple times to make sure it's stable, and that'll be his start of boil gravity.
So the other thing here is you're also testing the pH, correct? So if anyone remembers from the ceviche episode, we were testing pH as well. Last time we used a piece of paper, but this is actually just a pH meter. So it's a bulb and just measures the amount of the passage of ions that are moving through this bulb in the same way, but just a little bit more sophisticated. So the pH for something like this at the current moment is about 5.4. Is that the target that you're looking for?
That's exactly what we're going for.
So we're a little bit on the acidic side here.
And actually to that note, a little bit of that extra, being a little bit on the acidic side allows for food stability.
Yep.
Do it.
Oh, that tastes
it's actually
good.
pretty good.
That's pretty good. So why don't we just sell this? All right, so what do we need to do next?
So we've gone through the majority of our boiling process, and now we talked about denaturing proteins and stuff before and creating like this kind of mass. Well, to make our separation process, and we run the Whirlpool a little bit more efficient, we throw in this product which is called Brew Bright. It's actually like a carrageenan-based product, so it's extracted from seaweed, and it's a charged particle that will grab onto some of these denatured proteins and make them into a mass.
Yeah. So which, by what you're saying here though, if it's charged, right, then also proteins are charged, right?
Yep.
And by that nature, it's like a magnet for adding stuff together. And so when you have enough magnets that are coalescing together, it ends up just naturally falling out just by weight. Yep. So I think that's the whole principle behind this.
That's exactly right. So the next step is we're gonna bring the wort that we just boiled in here, and we're gonna transfer it into the Whirlpool. And the idea of the Whirlpool is to, again, kind of act as a filter to get all those solids out. Yep. We've added our Brew Bright or our fining agent to get all the solids together, and now we're gonna put them all in a big clump in the middle called a trube pile.
Yep.
And you'll get to see this as we transfer wort out of here and into the fermenter. You'll see where there's just this big circle that's just sitting there. So it works really well. You can go ahead and, you ready to pour those in?
Oh, we're waiting for Brett to turn on the hose.
Yeah, Brett, go ahead and start the transfer.
There you go.
Start the transfer.
Actually, I'm gonna reach
Sorry, that was a Star Trek joke. Full speed ahead. Warp zone 7.
So you can see?
Oh yeah, that's cool.
So those hops that you put in there are gonna get mixed in, integrate, and again, we'll get a little bit of bitterness out of them because it's still pretty hot, but we're mostly just gonna get flavor and aroma.
And then we'll pull that and we'll draw that all the way to the fermenter?
Yep, we'll go through our heat exchanger.
Yeah.
Cool it down to about 67 degrees where our yeast is happy.
Oh yeah.
And then go into the fermenter, and we'll also add oxygen during that step. So now we've been in the Whirlpool. We added the hops in there. It continued to spin and then eventually came to a stop. All the solids are now in the middle. Yeah. And so we're drawing off kind of to the side of the Whirlpool where we get a nice clear stream of wort. Yep. It's going down, going through our heat exchanger, which has wort on one plate and then water on another, wort, water, wort, water. Okay. And we're using our cold liquor, which is actually at about 50 degrees, so it's actually not even that cold. Yeah. And that's getting passed opposite direction, taking all that heat out of the wort, cooling it down to 67 degrees, and then coming out the backside. So like I said before, the boiling process drove all the gases out. Okay. And we want our yeast to get some oxygen at the beginning. And so we're also pumping oxygen back in line. So you can see in the side glass, you can see the gas kind of getting dissolved in as it's passing through. And then at that point, we essentially have 67-degree wort that's then being transferred through this hose and off to our fermenter.
So that's all the food we're gonna feed the yeast with.
Mm-hmm. Basically, yeah. And this is essentially gonna be their entire environment for the next 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yep.
So this is the fermenter, right?
This is the fermenter. Yeah, so we just finished our brewing process. We've transferred the wort into the tank, and so we've added yeast. And essentially what you're seeing here is the process of fermentation.
Yeah.
And so the yeast is at this point consuming sugar, producing CO2 and ethanol to create energy. So it starts out aerobic. We added oxygen in line while we were knocking out. Because obviously as we boiled the wort, when you boil liquids, you drive all the gases out of them.
Yep.
And so then when we cooled it down, we add oxygen back so that when the yeast sees that they have oxygen and then they have sugar from the wort and all that stuff, they wake up and they're like, oh, this is a pretty good environment to live in. And when they're in here, they don't know any better, but they start consuming all the oxygen. And before they know it, they bloom up to a large biomass. And then they run out of oxygen.
Yeah.
And at that point, they go anaerobic. And during anaerobic fermentation, their metabolism produces ethanol.
Oh, the ethanol portion. Okay.
The ethanol portion of it. And then as well as CO2, which is what you see bubbling out of the top. And so that's kind of where carbonation came from too, to some degree, is that like if you like sealed this up, the yeast would continue to produce that CO2, which would cause the liquid to carbonate. And so eventually that's...
But you don't add the carbonation until the end, right?
We add extra carbonation to the end for our process, but some of it happens naturally during fermentation.
Okay. So is this where the most of the work comes in, is figuring this part out?
This is the hardest because you can't measure a lot of that. It's all just sensory, right? So this is the cooking part, right? So you test different temperatures and you test different pitch rates and you test different O2 rates to see what you like your product the best at, and then you try to kind of stay that way. So we transferred the wort into the tank. We've added the yeast, it's ready to go. Realistically, all that's left from this point is we go through that fermentation process, which like I said, takes somewhere between 8 to 12 days, and about maybe 4 or 5 days after that, so a couple of weeks, we're gonna see that product that we made today move over to our bright beer tank, where it'll be just beer, no solids, crystal clear, beautiful. We're gonna add a little bit of vanilla to it just to kind of make Cali Cream in what it is today, and carbonate it. And at that point, we'll package and we end up with this.
Well, I guess we should try this,
Should we try this?
Yeah, this is my first time trying
this.
So
this isn't the batch that we made today.
No.
But
well, it could be. No one has to know. All right, so what am I thinking before I have this, right? So this is vanilla inspired a little bit.
It is.
So, and maybe some of the components we talked about, like kind of the honeyish kind of flavors.
You should have a nice balance. It shouldn't be overly bitter, but it shouldn't be overly sweet.
Okay.
Be very drinkable, and then you should have a little bit of vanilla bean when you first taste it.
So we should try it.
Cheers.
All right, cheers. Thanks for spending the day.
Of course.
Oh, okay, good. It's like cream soda.
Exactly.
This is it. We spent the entire day here learning about making beer. I think we talked a lot about the chemistry, talked a lot about the process. What is the relationship between the process and the chemistry to how we experience certain things. It's been a pretty good day. So thanks for hanging out in Chemists in the Kitchen, and everybody try their beer.
Cheers.
Cheers.